I'm Bob Harris, allegedly. Rumor has it. No, totally am Bob Harris from FootballDiehards.com. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Glad we're not doing this on Twitter Spaces, apparently. Hi, JSC. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Timothy. Give everyone a chance to show up here. Hope everyone's having a great day. A lot going on. We have OTAs have cranked up, so there's a little more grist for the mill, if you will. That's like old people saying there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Hope you're all having a great time. There's a lot of drafting, too, going on. A lot of excitement. Hello, Troy. How are you doing? A lot of drafting out there. If you're in the Fantasy Cares Eliminators, I am also taking part in those. I always have good luck in those. Hello, Dame. Thanks for coming. Appreciate seeing you. I saw you earlier today. Hello, Royal. Happy chat, everyone. I'm glad that everyone can make it. Give everyone a chance to show up. You know the deal. Hit the like button. I'm going to hit the dislike button now just to break that seal. Hit the like button. Subscribe. All the YouTube things that make YouTube so very, very happy. Also, go to FootballDiehards.com. We have great content there. Tons of stuff waiting for you. Use the promo code DieHards to get a 15% discount. You'll also catch me on the radio. In case you didn't know this, Football Diehards, it's also a radio show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. This Saturday night, we have a Veterans Appreciation Draft. Just look at, I see John Bonneville in here already trying not to wreck. I say this a lot, everybody. Hopefully many thousand years from now. Hello, Mr. Scampers. Many years from now, the archaeologists will be sifting through all our stuff, and they will decide, their complete inability to react to anything in a calm, reasoned manner is what led to their downfall. Certainly will. And I mean, NFL news is like the kind of the microcosm of that. And it's great watching if you're out there in the best ball rooms or you're drafting in these eliminators or in any draft, right now. You know, you can see the real-time reaction to all these little tidbits. John Bonneville mentions the Aaron Rodgers already strained his calf. We're all trying not to overreact in May, and we will all overreact. We'll all overanalyze. And, you know, I've already seen how many articles on that? Like 30, 40. Hi, Jim Furry. Thanks for coming. Appreciate everybody showing up. So I think it's always interesting, though, to watch how these things go. And we do tend to, overcorrect, and we do it in our drafts in real time. I can see it in the best ball rooms, or you'll see something happen, and look, I'm guilty of it. I do it all the time. And you think like maybe you're taking advantage of something. I always try to stress this when I'm doing fantasy football. There's a couple things. First thing, divorce the emotion from your decision making, right? And that's what we do when we're reacting to the moment. We're reacting with emotion as opposed to logic. But also look at the offseason as a continuum of data, right? It starts at the end of the season. We start plugging snips of data into our continuum, right? And at any given time, we have what at that time is a complete set of data. And, we can make decisions based on that, but do that realizing there's going to be more data to come. And the thing we should be doing right now is when these things happen that we're paying attention to in the moment, sure, it's fun to react to them in the moment, and it's fun to, adjust draft strategies, kind of in the moment as well. At this time of year, it's going to be later, and you're going to, all this information is going to come together. And that's when what I'm doing now is I'm taking these things or the things that coaches are saying. We'll talk about some of these stories here, throughout the next hour. And happy to take your questions, comments, anything you guys want to talk about, throw it in the chat. And I will get to it at some point here, and probably pretty promptly. You all know that I'm a sucker for a good comment or question, and I will bite like a fish, just like we do to this news. So, we have things going on, like a prime example right now, and I'll just use this as an example because I just drafted based on this. Brock Purdy, we've had some uncertainty, right, and with the elbow surgery, and it sounds like he's maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. Then Kyle Shanahan comes out and says he's going to start throwing here this week, and that he should be ready for the start of the season. Well, I've been pretty much dialed back. Hey, golf boy. I've been pretty much dialed back and had no shares. Purdy, I like Brock Purdy an awful lot. I think maybe more so for George Kittle's sake than maybe Brock Purdy's sake, but I think Brock Purdy's a serviceable back-end quarterback, a viable quarterback too, if he's the starter from the start of the season. And so I bought a share of him today as a third quarterback in an underdog best ball. because the news is positive. And so I think, and it's okay to do that right now, right? Because we're working with the data where we are. Just don't get too caught up and form hard, fast opinions. Be flexible this time of year based on these stories that are going to crop up and cause, and maybe use them in the counterintuitive ways. Maybe cash in on the value of another player, or use it to to kind of, maybe not the piece that everyone's talking about, but maybe some of the associated pieces. The big news today, and JSC has a question, I'll get to it in a second. I mean, the big news today is Lamar Jackson. Super excited, finally showed up for the OTAs, right? And talked a little bit about the offense, how they're going to be way pass heavier. He's still going to run, but they're going to be pass heavier, and he's going to have a little more freedom to call plays. I think it's interesting, to, like, if you look at Todd Monken, right? And I've talked about him before on these live streams, but I mean, he's really successful in the last 2 years at Georgia. Will that translate to the NFL? Well, I think some of it will, because he also has some history at the NFL level, right? You go back to 2019 in Cleveland, he had the Browns, and Nick Chubb had the league's second most rushing yards that year with 1,400 and almost 1,500 yards, 1,494, I want to say. Had 8 touchdowns that year. Baker Mayfield had a single season career high, 3,827 passing yards. He had 22 passing touchdowns that year. In 2018, Monken was in Tampa Bay, and he helped the Buccaneers lead the league in passing offense with 320 yards per game. So there's reason to get excited. And, of course, the last 2 years in Georgia, they were an offensive powerhouse. 2022, Georgia led the nation in total net yards, had 7,500 yards of offense, total points, 616. Stetson Bennett threw 27 touchdowns, ran for 10 more. Over the last 2 seasons, Georgia's offense ranked number 5 in the country in points per game, nearly 40 points per game. Number 8 in scrimmage yards per game, 472. And he used a lot of packages that seemed to suit what the Ravens do well. And his most common package was a 12 personnel with 1 back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. They got the personnel to do this. They ran that 59% of the time. So there's a lot to like about this, and maybe Lamar Jackson likes it. I'm happy Lamar Jackson is happy. Right? And we haven't seen him, I should look up the numbers here before I start saying stupid things that I don't know anything about without the numbers in front of me. But I mean, we can go back to, what was it? The MVP season, 2019 is what I want to go back to. 3,127 yards. That's his best passing year, right? So, I mean, look, he can throw. He had 36 touchdown passes that year. That's really good, right? So there's, they've added the pieces, whether it's Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham. You put in the chat what you think of Odell Beckham. I remain skeptical myself. But, hey, he's in a new place, and, maybe that ACL isn't going to be an issue. So a lot to like. So, you start extrapolating things out, like Lamar Jackson. I've already bumped him a little bit in my rankings. And, look, he was already pretty high. But based on the fact that, okay, he's got a contract and he's in OTAs, and this offense might be powerful. So I think you get to that range where it's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts are in a tier by themselves, kind of. I don't care which of the three you like. Joe Burrow, kind of the next guy off. After that, you're in the Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields territory. Maybe Justin Herbert should be in there. Maybe Trevor Lawrence should be in that same category. I don't know. Justin Herbert has a really favorable schedule, right, for a passer. So, but you look at Lamar Jackson, and I'm thinking, well, if he's going to throw a little more, if we're getting back closer to what he was in 2019, that's pretty appealing. So I've bumped him back up to 4 based on the fact that he has a contract, that he's in there, that the offense is going to focus a little more on the pass. Look, he's not going to stop running, people. You're still going to have that high floor. In case of Justin Fields, look, I know he can run as well. I'm not sure he can pass. I've seen Lamar do it. I have not yet seen Justin Fields do it at the pro level. Now, I like the things they've done for Justin Fields. Obviously, he's still right there at number 6 for me, so it's not like I'm out on him. But these are the adjustments you make in real time based on this information we have. But the key here is being flexible, right? Because it's only May. This information is coming at us. If you're drafting now, it's fine reacting to the drafts in the moment, because that's why we're in these drafts. We're trying to sort out our thoughts. We're experimenting with strategies, doing all kinds of cool stuff to kind of get us ready for the drafts that matter most, right? The ones closer to the season. So yeah, the overreaction, going back to Aaron Rodgers, he was running with the sled. He's never done this before. They got the little bungee cord on his ass, and he's dragging the sled along. They also do something with the medicine balls that he's not done before. And I know Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk is always looking for the, whatever little things he can to dig Rodgers, but he did make a pretty good point. He's getting older, and these things that they're asking him to do, maybe his body isn't set up to do them as much, and we'll see how they make these adjustments to deal with him. But I'm not going to overreact to this one. I think we've already overreacted enough to Aaron Rodgers this offseason. I have some questions going back here. Let's see. Do I think DeAndre Swift is a good value in round 6? Nah, I think he's a value. I think that's okay. I just want to look at who he's going around, So if you've been here on the live streams before, I've been talking to beat writers in Philadelphia. And 2 of them, including Chris Franklin, who I think has really been sharp, proven to be pretty sharp over the years from NJ.com. Both of these beat writers that I've talked to in the last month have been really adamant that Rashad Penny's the guy as long as he's healthy, like the heavy workload guy. And if that's the case, I think he's the value here. He's going way later. So let me bring up the best ball. Where are you guys drafting the most? I'm just curious. Put it in the chat. Is it underdog, or do you do best ball 10s? I do a lot more best ball 10s, so I tend to use that a little more as my base ADP. But the underdog ADP is pretty good as well. Just check, see what he is. Jahmyr Gibbs, So yeah, I guess he is. Where are you at? Let's see. He's going a little lower. Rashad Penny's going off is about round 10. I love the value on Rashad Penny. I'm not going to lie. I'm a sucker for this. And maybe too much of a sucker. Let's go over here and see what we got for Swift. So Swift is going off on best ball 10s as running back 20, right? So the players going after him that I would rather have. J.K. Dobbins, probably rather have. Cam Akers, definitely would rather have. Miles Sanders, definitely rather have. Rachaad White, definitely rather have. Javonte Williams, I don't know what the hell. I still don't have any shares of Javonte Williams. I know there has been some recent talk by Mr. Sean Payton that maybe he won't open season or open training camp on PUP. I'm taking that with a grain of salt. One of the great things about this time of year is we learn a lot about what kind of liars people are. And we should be mindful of that. I'm not saying Sean Payton is totally a liar. I'm saying we'll find out what kind of liar he is. Right? So, or isn't. I think he kind of is. I don't think anyone knows what's going on with Javonte Williams. So I think he's like a value at that point. A lot of his value in Detroit came from his work as a receiver. The Eagles haven't been throwing that much to their running backs, and so I'm out on him at the current. If he's going as running back 20 out right now, I'm out on him, right? And I think round 6, some of the players I'm getting in round 6 are the James Conner, who I'm going for path to workload, right? And I don't see DeAndre Swift having a clear path to workload. I don't think he's a heavy workload guy until he proves otherwise. And he could do that. I'm not saying he can't, but he hasn't. And others have. Miles Sanders, I think, is going to be a clearer path to workload guy. Would much rather have him. Cam Akers, I think, is going to be a clearer path to workload guy. I would rather have him. So I don't think he's a horrible value there, JSC. Just probably not one I'm as interested in. JSC also wants to know, do I like Brock Purdy in a standard redraft format, which is his league type? I mean, I like him as a quarterback too, but I'd like to wait until I have more information. So if you're drafting right now, you're probably not drafting in your home league, so you don't have to worry about it. If you're drafting a best ball, I'm only comfortable taking him as a quarterback 3 at this point. And even then, I think I'm taking a super huge chance. Just don't know. Dame Overboard stumbled into a share of Purdy in a dynasty startup last year and have since become a Purdy stan. I am too. And so Jim Purdy mentions if Purdy is even playing at the start of the season. So if he starts throwing this week, as they claim, I think that's a pretty good trajectory, right? That puts him right on the schedule, or maybe even a little ahead of where they expected him after the surgery was done, which it took a little while to get to the surgery because they'd like to wait till all the swelling and inflammation goes down so that the player can begin rehabbing right away. But it wasn't the full rebuild. It was just the repair. So I'm optimistic. And if he's the quarterback, to me, if you've been here, you know how I feel about this. I mean, this is all about Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan, Matt Waldman will call him a Stepford quarterback, like a Stepford wife. Go out and watch that movie. It's fantastic. Like the original one, or you can watch whichever one. Anyway, the quarterbacks who are out there, and I do think that's why Shanahan likes him. He processes the information the way Kyle Shanahan wants him to process it. He makes the reads Kyle Shanahan wants him to make. And you look back to no further than last year, there was a big play where, George Kittle was like his fourth read. And he went through the progression, and Kittle made a real great kind of juggling catch, and it was a big play at a tough moment. So I think that's, there's a lot to like about him. In just that he processes the information and he does what the coach wants. And when the coach is Kyle Shanahan, he wants his way. He wants what he wants, and Brock Purdy gives him that. And honestly, that offense is pretty damn good, right? They've got Christian McCaffrey, they got Deebo Samuel, you've got George Kittle, you've got Brandon Ayuk, some really good frontline players who can help a quarterback out. So Jim, I'm with you. If he's playing at the start of the season, I think if we, when we get to the point where we're drafting our actual teams, our redraft teams, the teams will be, going into battle with every single week and managing, and not in best ball 10s or in the underdog best balls or the DraftKings best balls or the fan tracks. I keep seeing Lisa Ann's going to be doing a best ball draft today on fan tracks. I'm going to get one of those. I hope you all do as well. Right now you can afford to take chances because everyone's out there. We're all working with the same information. It was like, when the financial crisis hit in, 2008 or whatever. I'm going, oh, wow, I don't know if I want to put any money in there. And then I realized, I'm going to buy low. What if it crashes again? Well, if it crashes again, I'm no more screwed than everyone else. This is the same thing. You're no more screwed than anyone else. Nobody else knows more than you or less than you. We're all working on these hunches, and we're trying to build the information. I think what you're doing in these drafts right now, what I'm trying to do, is get a really good feel for what the values are and when I can get players. So when the drafts do matter the most, I'm able to just walk in that room like Conor McGregor walks into a building, that super confident swagger, and be ready and feel really comfortable going into the draft, knowing that I have a feel for when I can get guys. And like we all have our players we plant our flags on, right? You all have players you love and players you're trying to kind of avoid. And you want to know when other people are going to be getting those players. We have tools at the FootballDiehards.com website. You'll be surprised to learn. The SOP tool kind of helps you understand, lets you lay out some players that maybe you're more interested in, and kind of helps you map out when you need to draft them based on what the current ADP is. These are kind of helpful tools, and that's the thing about ADP. We discussed it a lot this time of year. This ADP is not when you have to draft somebody. It's when somebody's getting drafted. You probably have to draft them ahead of that, right? If you want to make sure you secure their services. And then the question for you is how much sooner you want to draft them. What's it worth to you? And that, this all comes from some of these, the effort we're putting in now is going to inform us of what we need to do when the drafts matter the most, or at least gives us an edge, a jump on making those decisions a little better. So I'll catch up on some questions here. Nick Chubb going to have a 2022 Josh Jacobs season, John Bonneville thinks. I think you might not be wrong. Look, so let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland offense. I think it's going to be better. Turns out, we were looking at this the other night, Emil Kadlik and I. We're working on rankings. We're working on the magazines, people. They'll be out soon enough. Fantasy Football Pro Forecast right in our sites right now, the 34th edition. So we've been kind of working on the rankings a little bit, and you sit there and you examine each player and, why do we have him here and how do we feel about him? So I'm a little bullish on Deshaun Watson, and we were going back and reviewing some of the numbers. I'm bullish on him because he's like a top 5 quarterback every damn year on a lousy team, and now he's maybe on a better team in a better situation with a great offensive line and some good pieces around him. But you're right, Kevin Stefanski is still going to be a run-heavy guy, but they're not paying Deshaun Watson this $230 million guaranteed to have him stand around and do nothing but hand off. They're gonna pass the ball more. If you remember back to the piece Matthew Berry does every year, the one he does coming out of the combine where he talks to the people, talks to all the behind the scenes people and the GMs, coaches, and everybody gossips amongst themselves, and they think we're going to see a lot more passing for this team. But I think that makes Nick Chubb more dangerous, right? And so I do think, look, we saw Josh Jacobs, pull off the season he pulled off, and Devontae Adams still have a huge season. It wasn't like they weren't passing people. So I'm kind of with John Bonneville. I think the investing in Cleveland pieces named Watson, Chubb, and Amari Cooper, those are things I'm doing. And David Njoku to a degree, right? But I think those primary pieces are all going to be well worth the price of admission. And I'm growing increasingly higher on Watson as well. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be this year's Josh Jacobs, says JSC. I don't know. David Montgomery is there. Josh Jacobs didn't have a David Montgomery. Nick Chubb's not going to have a David Montgomery. I think that's a concern for me. And, and we'll see how this plays out. And this is maybe some of the hype that we're going to be dealing with this time of year is, they're using him all over the place. He's going to line it up in the slot. I mean, him and Bijan Robinson, they're not running backs, people. They're multi-purpose weapons. And there are no Kyle Juszczyks, the original multi-purpose weapon. Yes, I'm kidding, people. So there we go. So yeah, I do think there's I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be that, but if you do, you're getting him at a value, right? I think he's a pretty reasonable price tag, especially this time of year. Let me go back into that Best Ball 10s ADP and see where he's going off right now, because I do think it's not an exorbitant price tag to me for Gibbs. Where is it? Running back 15. It's a little high. A little higher than I'd like, but I don't think it's out of line, right? Like, so as much as we hate DeAndre Swift, where does he finish in the rankings because of his scoring and his his receiving totals? I mean, he's done pretty damn well, even if we don't like him, because it's not a reliable production, right? And there's something to be said for reliability, people. Mike Dempsey and I talk about this all the time, right, on the Football Diehards radio program, which you can hear it right now on Saturdays from 7 to 9. And I totally got off the subject earlier, but we're doing a military appreciation draft. We're drafting with a group of current military members and veterans on Saturday night. So listen to that. We'll have them all on the show. I think I'm also on Fantasy Dirt next Monday and Friday. So I'll be sitting in there during the daytime. That's from 1 to 3 p.m., 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. As I do the time zone translations, it's not a natural thing for me. Royal Slave playing to the Best Ball 10s. A lot of them with me. Can you take both Penny and Swift? He wants to go. Golf Boy, FFPC, 33, 77, 125 Best Ball Slims. And I'm curious, is anyone doing yet getting into the Best Ball Mania 4 on Underdog? I'm going to get into that. I'm going to jump in, but I haven't jumped in early. I know a lot of people are in it early. There's various approaches. I'm trying to learn about all this. On the fly. My favorite. So can you take both Penny and Swift? I think you can. I don't know if you can play them both, right? I think maybe better in best ball. I don't know if we get into the season if that's something I'm going to feel comfortable with. Like I'm good with Penny where he's going right now. He to me, based on what the people are telling me, look, he's got to stay healthy, right? And you're going to hear me belabor this point because I think it's worth noting. I mean, in Seattle 2 years ago, final 6 games of the season, he ran for 200 yards more than everybody else in the NFL, anybody else in the NFL. Right? He scored a number of touchdowns in that span. I want to say 6 or 7 touchdowns in that span. So it's in him, and he did that in Seattle. In Philadelphia, the offensive line play a little better. The quarterback play is pretty on point. I mean, there's a lot of pieces. Will they run as much? Maybe not, but they're still going to be a run-heavy team, I think, to a degree. So I'm kind of only wanting to invest in one piece. I think there's always a danger, Royal, and you know this. I mean, in investing in backfields where you don't have a clear-cut idea who's going to get the bulk of the workload. So I'm going with the happy story that's being told to me from the beat writers. The Penny's going to be it early, and he's the cheaper piece. So I'm kind of keen on this. I'm not as keen on Swift. I think the price is too high for me. So I think you can take them. I'll not be taking them both. I'm kind of avoiding Swift, maybe to my detriment. JSC, my favorite backfields lately have been the Eagles and the Lions. Like, I think there's reasons for that, right? The offensive line in both cases. For the Philadelphia Eagles, that is a road grading unit. For the Detroit Lions, it's pretty damn good too, right? And they have a lot of carries inside in scoring position, according to Jamal Williams. I almost said a curse word there. A ton of them. You can put on the adjective you want. So yeah, I do think that there's something, but I wish this was like a situation where it was Arizona had this offensive line, or New England, where we haven't talked a lot about Ramondre Stevenson, but he's growing on me immensely because I don't see the other pieces there that are going to cut into his workload. Right? Is James Robinson going to cut into his workload? Is Pierre Strong going to cut into Ramondre Stevenson's workload? I don't see it. I don't see anyone cutting into James Conner's workload. I just don't like the offense that much. I wish we had a situation in Detroit and Philadelphia where there was a clear-cut front runner for that role. So Golf Boy wants to know, what do you think about Ridley and Trevor back-to-back at the 4-5 turn? I'm not against it. I mean, I think it's a little bit high, but not over. I mean, I don't think it's overdoing it, and I do want some of that offense. So Trevor Lawrence has kind of been my cutoff guy. When I get to the point and all the quarterbacks that I have ranked ahead of him are off the board, for a while there I was drafting him, and I think a quarterback 7 or 8 is, kind of the range where you're looking at. And if you're in a draft and that's where the quarterbacks are going, I'm not against it. I think Ridley, I was just trying to look at some of my recent drafts to see where Ridley's going. And probably I should not be putting too much stock in that because I'm drafting with Mike Dempsey, who covers the Jaguars on a daily basis. And he's really keen. He's pretty keen on Ridley. Let me look and see where the last draft I'm in, where Ridley's going. And what have I done? You should know how to work your computer, people, when you're doing things on your computer. So Ridley at 4. At the tail end of round 4, and Lawrence went in also round 4, a couple picks before. So I don't think you're overdoing it. I thought Lawrence went a little early here. He went ahead of Jackson. He went ahead of Herbert. This was a little aggressive for me on Lawrence. But yeah, I think 4 and 5 is not unreasonable. I would like cheaper stacks, more organic stacks, or more expensive ones. But I think that's doable. I'm not 100% against that. What do you think of that? Where is Antonio Gibson ADP in best balls right now? Guessing he is a decent value. He is a decent value. I think that's something worth, plumbing the depths of that one, because I think, we have a perception, and correctly so, Brian Robinson is the front line back there, but also it's a new offense. Eric Bieniemy is running it. It's more like the Kansas City offense, I'm guessing. So you wonder if there isn't going to be a little more of a receiving role, and with J.D. McKissick no longer in the picture, it's safe to say, I think, so Antonio Gibson, running back 39, going right after Rashad Penny, and right ahead of Tyler Algier, and ahead of Damian Harris, ahead of Devon Achane, and a lot as well, and ahead of Jerick McKinnon, who, if you'll recall, was one of the best running backs in fantasy over the final 6 games last season. Was well inside the top 5, depending on how you narrow down your search there. He's running back 2 or 3 or 4 during that span. All those guys are going after players named Zach Charbonnet, Khalil Herbert, Jamal Williams, Alexander Madison, Brian Robinson, Alvin Kamara, James Cook. I'm not saying that look, I'd like to get a little better feel for what the offense is trying to do here and for what Sam Howell is, but I think Antonio Gibson at that point is starting to look like a little bit of a value. If Purdy is the starting quarterback, how high would I rate a tight end George Kittle? I want to say 4. I think I have him he's pretty high right now. You're still drafting him. I think I'm starting to bake into the cake that Purdy's going to be back, if not to start the season, early enough that it's not going to bury Kittle's value. So I have him at 4 right now. I like Darren Waller at 5. I think he's going to get a huge workload. Dallas Goedert, kind of overlooked. Evan Ingram at 7. Still have Kyle Pitts at 8. I wish I could let go, but I cannot. Pat Frymouth, David Njoku, seem kind of Dalton Schultz, all Cole Kmet, all kind of seem to be interchangeable, higher floor guys. And then you get into the Chigo Conquos and guys that I think have a little more upside, and maybe I want to wait a little longer at that point. So yeah, I think Kittle at 4. And Purdy does, says Rock Sox 37. Love throwing to Kittle. His points per game jump when Purdy became quarterback last year. That is 100% true. Would I rather have Jeff Wilson or Kendre Miller as running back 5? Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped a question. My bad. I skipped a couple questions. I'm horrible like that. Gibson's 118 on FFPC. 118 overall, so you're looking at double-digit-ish rounds. They're close to it. Which tight end has the most potential over the rookie contract? Kincaid, Myers, or Laporta? I want to think it's Laporta, who I've been drafting like a maniac in dynasty drafts. But it might be Kincaid. I mean, I was skeptical, a little bit skeptical of him coming in. Matt Waldman has kind of disabused me of my skepticism. He feels like Kincaid is going to be a contributor as this season wears on, like down the stretch this season. Hello, Albert. And so I don't think you're going to see him used as a regular tight end. I don't know that you're going to see Laporta used in that way either. Myers, yes, you're going to see him used in that way. And I'm not sure, I don't have as much confidence in Meyer as I do in Kincaid and Laporta. Kincaid is probably the correct answer right here. JFC, would you rather have Jeff Wilson or Kendre Miller as a running back 5? I'd probably play the upside and say Kendre Miller. I can see a path, which includes an Alvin Kamara suspension and Jamal Williams being in a new spot and an older player. Look, I'm not expecting him to be horrible or anything by that means, but I think there's a clearer path to workload in my mind that I can create in my mind than for Jeff Wilson, who, is an older player himself, 27, not old, but older, has been, tends to go, to get nicked up. He's got my Raheem Mostert, and we'll see what Devin Achane is. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are super high on him. In Miller's case, if Kamara suspended and Jamal Williams is either disappointing or plays a more limited role than we expect, I think there's I can tell myself a really story about Kendre Miller as my running back 5. Kittle is top 3 with Purdy. I do not think that is a too hot of a take, Royal Slade. I think that's a fair assessment, as a matter of fact. Royal Slade not sold on Penny staying healthy. I don't know that you should be sold on him staying healthy, right? That's the thing. I mean, he hasn't done it. I am injury agnostic. I don't draft players as if they're going to get hurt. But honestly, I watch football. I know Penny's history. That's there. It's a real thing. He has struggled to stay healthy. Have they been, so that's where I start getting into okay, is it a chronic injury? Is it a single thing that's been an issue? No, it's kind of been, he's chronically injured, but not with a chronic injury. There's a difference. But there is no doubt that he has struggled to stay on the field. I'm not going to, I can't deny that. So, and like a lot of this, we have these discussions, right? And I'm injury agnostic. You don't have to be, right? I go into football looking at it as a collision sport where someone could get hurt at any given time. Jonathan Taylor had never been hurt his entire life, right? And I talked to him coming in his rookie year, and we talked about the heavy workload he had in college, and he told me this goes back to high school and that he hadn't missed a practice. So super healthy guy. Last year he was not super healthy. It just happens, right? So that's kind of where I'm at on this. But I totally understand if you see a player who has burned you or you've seen multiple times just can't stay on the field. I get wanting to avoid that player. And I probably do it subconsciously. I try consciously not to do it. I try to look for value in those cases, and I see it in Penny. And I see the upside of Penny. That guarantees nothing, right? Doesn't guarantee he stays healthy. Doesn't guarantee he has the role that people are telling me he's going to have. There are other players involved. There are circumstances involved that are outside of our control. We're just trying to predict things based on what we know at the moment. What we know at the moment, or what I've been told at the moment, is Rashad Penny's in a really good spot to garner a heavy portion of this workload behind a great offensive line. And right now he's not hurt. That can change on the first snap of the game. So totally understandable. By the way, if you're building rosters and you have concerns with these players that tend to get beat up or that you feel have injury issues or you feel are boom or bust, I talk about this every year. It's probably a good time to talk about it. Right now, you can have risky players on your roster and make sure your roster is not risky, right? You get safer players or players you perceive to be safer, right? Again, we all thought Jonathan Taylor was that guy last year, right? If I go to current ADP, just to throw this out here, because I do think it bears mentioning. Let's go to the overall top. We'll use the best ball 10s. Justin Jefferson has never been injured, or has not missed significant time due to injury. He's been a little nicked up. Christian McCaffrey has. Jamar Chase has. Travis Kelce, not a lot. Austin Eckler has. Tyreek Hill has. Cooper Kupp has. Bijan Robinson has not, because he has not played a single damn game. Jonathan Taylor has. Saquon Barkley has. Stephon Diggs, been relatively healthy. Devontae Adams, relatively healthy. But you get my point. It's like, are you avoiding all those guys? Probably not. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? It's going to happen. Players are going to get hurt. This is the physics of the game alone makes it almost certain people are going to get hurt. Humans aren't supposed to be that big and fast and make the moves they're making. The laws of physics suggest that, the forces and the acceleration and all those things are not what our joints are built to handle. So that's going to be a problem going forward no matter what. So I kind of beat that horse to death because I feel strongly about it. John Bonneville thought the D-Hop trade rumors were dead, but seems like they keep cropping up. Well, the fact that he's not with the team, his comments this week of, he'd like to be on a team with stable management and a quarterback who loves the game. Really? Like a quarterback who loves the game. I think he's telling us something. Maybe he's not a Call of Duty player. I don't know. Interesting. Kyler Murray has been, by the way, on the field for OTAs, not working, just taking mental reps. But that's interesting. And Jonathan Gannon kind of downplayed it. But I do think it's not dying. And I don't think it will die until he's there for the start of the season. He did want to get traded. We all know that, even though he said, I don't know why y'all think I wanted to get traded. Well, because you told us. You said the words, I want to get traded. And you said what teams you wanted to get traded to. Then when it didn't happen, you said, I don't know, why would you say that I want to be traded? Come on, man. Anyway, so I don't think it's going away. I think we'll hear more about it. And he's working out right now in Toronto instead of with the team, so that kind of adds to that whole vibe. Timothy Scrom would like to know what the latest is on Joe Mixon. I'm starting to think Joe Mixon isn't going anywhere. I'm starting to think I've kind of been laying off him, and let's look at that ADP, because I think this one is interesting because I think he's a super nice value right now, given what maybe his anticipated role is going to be. I know Chase Brown's there. Everyone's excited. But as long as Mixon's there, this is going to be a problem. I think, there was a point where we kind of thought he wasn't going to be there, or maybe there was going to be something going on. I don't know if that's the case anymore. So Joe Mixon is running back 17. Dalvin Cook is running back 16, people. I'd bet you a nickel that Dalvin Cook is not going to be a Minnesota Viking. If he is going to be a Minnesota Viking, I will bet you the other nickel I have two, I value them greatly, that Alexander Madison is going to play a bigger role this year than he did last year if Dalvin Cook's there, and even if healthy. Joe Mixon, going as running back 17 in a really good offense, he can catch the football, turns out. I don't know. I think maybe we're underestimating Joe Mixon a little bit. And the latest is that there is no latest. I mean, he's got some off-field issues he's got to deal with. And so, okay, he's not alone in that. I just think I'm starting to get to the point where I feel like I want a little bit. He had a horrible start last year, right? Through week 8, he was horrible. They made some adjustments to their blocking scheme after that, and he came on fine. And I think Fantasy Pros notes he finished the season as Pro Football Focus's second highest graded running back. Had a 5-touchdown game against the Panthers in week 9. In his 8 healthy games from week 9 to the conference championship, he had over 16 fantasy points per game. So that would have made him running back 5 on the season. So I think we maybe are overlooking him. This bears watching. I mean, we need to see the circumstances if he's going to be there. And Chase Brown, Royal Slade mentions, is a solid handcuff, and I would agree with that. I'm sorry I put that juju out there for Justin Jefferson, John. I didn't mean it. DK Metcalf, JSC wants to know, has been going too high for my liking. I know this isn't a popular opinion, but I'd rather have Tyler Lockett later. I don't think that's like a totally horrible take. I like both of them. I think they're both kind of decent values. If we're expecting, and the question is, do we believe Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback he was last year, or the most accurate, or at least the highest completion percentage? I kind of think he is. I kind of think he's maybe turned into something, but we don't know that for sure. We'll have to kind of wait and see. But I do think last year we really devalued DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett because we weren't sure of the quarterback situation. I feel a little more comfortable with it. Let's see what the ADP is. And by the way, Tyler Lockett, last 5 years, at least 8 touchdowns a year, 2 10-touchdown seasons, 8 touchdowns a year, over 100 targets a year. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba going to cut into that workload? Yes. But he's going to cut into more, I think, the tight ends' workloads. They were pretty heavily targeted last year. It's thinking that we could see Metcalf with 120 to 140 targets, Lockett with 100 plus, and Smith and Jigba with 80 to 90. I think we can live in that world. So materially speaking, I like the cheaper piece if they're within the same range, and I think that's pretty reasonable, right? So buying the cheaper piece that's almost going to be nearly as productive, I think is a fair approach. I prefer Tyler Lockett in best ball though, and I prefer DK Metcalf in regular weekly fantasy. Jim Furry says, I either drafted Mark Andrews too high last year, or he was a semi-bust when likely entered the picture with Jackson getting more. Why does Andrews still rank so high? I think because he's a receiver on that team. Much like I think Darren Waller is going to be the best receiver. And I mean this is, of all the receivers, including the wide receivers. I still think Mark Andrews is the wide receiver one on that team. And sources tell me, the sources being my eyes, when I watch Ravens games, he's the best player on the field. To me, he looks like he can be unstoppable. I think the offense needs to help him out a little more, and I think it will. They will run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so maybe likely it'll be a limiting factor. They've run 2 tight end sets in the past, so I think for me, Jim Andrews, it's a lot of it has to do with my own eyeball test, right? I just think he looks like the guy. Look, I don't think he's ever going to be Travis Kelce. I mean, he outplayed him one year, but I don't think he's going to consistently be that high end. I think he's going to be consistently high-end enough. And that's the argument for me. And I get your argument is not without merit. He's got more receivers. But Mark Andrews has been the primary threat. And we're going to be talking about an offense that Todd Monken leaned heavily on the tight ends at Georgia as well. So, and certainly Lamar Jackson's leaned heavily on the tight end. So it might be a little too high. I've kind of vacillated a little bit. I've moved him up just recently back up to number 2. I had TJ Hawkinson ahead of him, and so a couple factors that changed that: the arrival of or addition of Jordan Addison in Minnesota, and Lamar Jackson's back and locked and loaded in Baltimore. So I have him at number 2. If you want to avoid that tier and you're not as comfortable with that, I think that next tier of tight ends is perfectly fine, including George Kittle, including, for me, Darren Waller. But if you don't like Darren Waller, I think Dallas Goedert is a super fair play. And I think Evan Ingram is in line for another good year. I wish he would sign his franchise tender. If he's listening right now, Evan, get that done. You too, Saquon. I see you out there. Just sign the damn thing. It ain't going to hurt nobody. All right, so there we have that. Andrews was really banged up. He was last season. That is true as well. And so was Lamar Jackson. And like the previous year, the backups went even deeper on Mark Andrews. I think that was less the case this past year. 2 years ago, they were all in. The backups, when they had to play, were all in. John Bonneville doesn't think likely had anything to do with it. I think I would agree with fair take by both of you, Mr. Scampers and John Bonneville, coming in hot. By the way, if you just got here and you're wondering who the hell I am, I'm Bob Harris. I've been doing this a little while, since the year 1993. As you can tell, I'm very old. You'll find me at FootballDiehards.com. Use the promo code DieHards to get 15% off anything you buy there. Tons of content. Get into the season. We'll have our August update draft guide available. It's fantastic. Our in-season flash update, also fantastic. We're going to do a ton of content here on the YouTube channel. So if you have not subscribed, do so right now. There's a button right there. Just hit it. Hit the notification bell. Hit the like button. The YouTube algorithmic things will feel really good about us. All that. And I appreciate everyone. You guys are guys and girls have been fantastic. I really appreciate the time you spend with me, and I enjoy the time I spend with you. And some of you I spend time with in other places as well. I'm out there consuming other content, and I see you out there doing it well. So appreciate all of you out there supporting everybody. Robert wants to know, The best ball rankings. Do you do the best ball rankings at Football Diehards? Wide receiver have? Yes. Those are my rankings. And I do like Cup better than Jefferson. And here's why. And maybe I shouldn't in best ball, right? Because you're looking for the big spike games. I think definitely in redraft, I'm higher on Cup. So I did an entire video on my rankings, and I've explained at length. You can go back on the YouTube channel. Did you know Football Diehards has a YouTube channel? Apparently so. You can go back and you can find some of my previous videos where I talk about my top guys. And there's 6 players that I really like an awful lot, and I think you could make an argument for any of them being number 1. Why do I like Cooper Kupp as my top receiver over Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who, and I think, again, any of those 3, I could make an argument as the number 1 pick overall, 100%. I'm making it for Kupp because he's been the more consistent producer. Matthew Stafford seems to be in better shape, and I say seems to be. We know he is. He's throwing this year, which he was not this time last year. I don't know that he'll hold up through that. That's why Mike Valley and myself love him love Stetson Bennett as our super sneaky dynasty quarterback that will probably never come to fruition. But anyway, yes. So that's why Jefferson has had some up and down games. I love the spike games, but is Jordan Addison going to be a little bit of a limiting factor? I don't know about that, but he is there, and he's a good player, and they've invested highly in him. TJ Hawkinson, there's room for all these guys. You know, the targets last year were really good for Justin Jefferson, and still Adam Thielen had 100 targets. KJ Osborne had, I want to say, 190 targets. TJ Hawkinson had a ton of targets. You've heard me say this before, but there was a 3-game stretch where Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson tied for the NFL lead with 37 targets each over the course of 3 games. So the thing I like about Cooper Kupp is the week-to-week scoring. He is the average points per game. He is above those guys if you go last year, if you go the year before. So that's where I'm at. But again, Robert, if you like any of them more than the others, I can make a really good argument for Jamar Chase after he came back from injury last year, the way that Zach Taylor, to his credit, adjusted the usage, adjusted the routes he ran. They were trying to shut him down from making the big plays. So they ran him on more intermediate routes and across the middle, and he was super effective with those things and maybe even more effective and can still make the big plays down the field. So there's something to be said for all these guys, including Justin Jefferson, who is super good and a pretty good offense. And Kirk Cousins, another quarterback where, we were talking about him yesterday as well, Emil and I. Here's a guy who, every year is, maybe ranked as a quarterback 12 or slightly outside the top. And he ends up in the top 10. Last year he was quarterback 7. He's got some good weapons. So there you have it. So I think I flogged that enough for you. But yes, I am responsible for that. I did that. Robert, I hope you enjoyed it. John Bonneville, I buried Lockett in my rankings last year. I think I had him at like wide receiver 60. I think this is something, and I've talked about it before. If you've heard it again, I hate to beat this into the dirt as well. But I'm trying not to let my fear of a quarterback situation throw me all the way off. I'm trying to benefit. I'm trying to leverage the value for when players are being diminished. So last year, Amari Cooper was one. I want to say that Metcalf and Lockett were probably the prime example. So this year, I'm trying not to overthink it with guys like Godwin. And Evans, if I'm getting a cheap enough price, I'm kind of interested in those guys, more so. How big of a TV is that? I have big TVs everywhere. This is not a TV, though. This is just a screen. This is our little virtual studio. We're very tricky like this. Hi, Gator. Thanks for coming. So, yes, I'm not burying any wide receivers in my rankings this year because of the quarterback. Some of them it's a tough thing about rankings. I have like 40 guys I think are top 10 potential. Unfortunately, only 10 of them fit in the top 10. I hate that part. After Travis Kelce, Brian Larkin wants to know, what round would you consider drafting tight end to? I have gone to the second round. I prefer like the third or later. And if I don't get like one of my top choices, whether it's Andrews or Hawkinson, I'm probably waiting until maybe 5 or so and looking for Waller at that point. Or, Kittle in that range. It's going to be more Kittle going forward because I'm gaining confidence in the notion of Brock Purdy. I did used to draft by etching the names in rocks. And then I came across, I invented charcoal, and I started scribbling on the wall of my cave. Hello, Wendy. Thanks for coming. Glad you made it. I have been spending smoke signals often. Who do I think will be the most risk-reward player this year? For me, it would be Christian McCaffrey. I think, so I'm probably overstating my case here, right? But I think it might be like, I think Tyreek Hill is like a boom-bust player. I don't know if he's most risk-reward. Let me think about it for a second. That's a pretty good question. I mean, could it be guys like, Devontae Adams, a different quarterback? I'm not sure. I have to think about this one. I mean, obviously, the obvious guys that come to mind are the players who were drafting highly still, but don't have that clear path to workload, like Kenneth Walker III, right? Who, I still think he's going to be the lead guy there. It's kind of been the history. They bring these highly drafted running backs in and then make them sit until the guy gets hurt. Maybe that's the case with Kenneth Walker, but the risk is there that there's another piece there that can be pretty productive in Zach Charbonnet. So that's why. By the way, another receiver that I think is like that I'm trying not to diminish too much. Two more are the Washington receivers, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Maybe Sam Howell isn't horrible. Maybe he's serviceable. JSC is only drafting Mike Evans if you get him in round 10 at the earliest. I don't know that I've seen him go quite that late. I want to say I've seen him go earlier. You might not get very many shares of Zach of Mike Evans. I'm trying to look in the draft behind me where he went out. Let me check ADP right now. He's got like 1,000 yards a year, 1,000 yards every season. I mean, can you get it? What wide receiver has the most upside? Okay, let me see where Evans is going before I get caught up with some of these other questions. I'm like so easily distracted. I'm the worst. This is what happens when you get old, kids. Squirrel. Okay, Evans. Wide receiver 28. You're probably not getting him in the double-digit rounds, but close to it. And honestly, looking at some of the players that are going in that same range, whether it's Christian Watson, I might rather have Christian Watson. But I don't know about the quarterback. Might rather have Tyler Lockett. I'm learning more about the quarterback. But maybe I want George Pickens. Maybe I'm more interested in taking a chance on George Pickens, who's going about 5 receivers later. So, I mean, that's the thing about this time of year. There's a lot of lanes to drive down. If you don't like the Mike Evans highway, you can just jump on the Christian Watson Boulevard and take it into the middle of downtown, right? So okay. I mean, I don't think you're going to get him that cheap. I still think he can be serviceable, but obviously there are concerns. What wide receiver has the most upside outside the top 24? This is an interesting question. Let's define that top 24. Let me see who is at 24. Michael Pittman's at 24. The guys right above that: Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper. I have a lot of shares of that. So outside, we're looking at guys like Drake London, Chris Godwin. I don't know if he has huge upside. I think Christian Watson has huge upside. We saw the playmaking ability. 7 touchdowns over 4 games last year. He's big. He's very fast. Just don't know about the quarterback. Looking beyond that, some of the players that are down lower that I think, obviously Kadarius Toney has some upside if he can stay healthy. Brandon Cooks is a guy that's going way cheap that, is easily overlooked. He's in Dallas playing with a good quarterback. He's a guy that I'm kind of liking to add some shares of. I don't know. There's so many of them. I don't want to say, it's hard for me to pick just one. If you maybe just pick just one, I think it would, think Tyler. It's probably Christian Watson at that point. But there's a lot of them. So many. What is your opinion of Deuce Vaughn of the Cowboys? He's very small, Timothy. I don't know what to make of him. He was super productive in college, so I don't want to diminish him because of his size. I don't think he's the kind of complementary player to Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard's locked in to that primary role. And somebody else is going to be a contributor. I don't know that it's going to be Deuce Vaughn. Maybe Deuce Vaughn is the next Tony Pollard after Tony Pollard leaves because they're not going to tag him again next year, and he's not going to get a long-term contract. I don't think. So maybe that's it. John Bonneville, McLaurin and Dotson are ballers. Curtis Samuel, underrated. Totally underrated. Discount Debo. He is at a discount right now, and maybe more so than he should be. People have the fear of of Christian McCaffrey usurping all the workload. Well, I know a lot of Devo's value comes from being a runner. Also, he's a very good receiver. So Baker Mayfield is quarterback. I get it. I mean, again, I just mentioned in 2018, Baker Mayfield threw 22 touchdowns. I mean, it's, this is what I'm trying not to do, JSC. I'm trying not to overlook a talented player who doesn't have the best quarterback. Because guess what? I mean, let's go back over the course of history. Let's look at Andre Johnson of the Houston Texans, the original quarterback-proof player who annually produced huge numbers despite playing with a series of some of the worst quarterbacks you've ever heard. Tony Banks was his quarterback at one point. So I don't want to, so that's kind of where I'm at on the dismissing players because I don't like their quarterback. Even Baker Mayfield, who's horrible. Kind of. Who are my top 3 wide receivers this year? Mike, I just said was discussing at length. If you get a chance, go back and listen to the full discussion of that. But it's Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase are my top 3 in that order. And I think you could make an easy argument that any of them could be number 1 this year. Jahmyr Gibbs is someone with high risk, high reward. I would agree with that. Dame Overboard chimes in with that because we just don't know how much David Montgomery we're going to see. So here's the thing. Coming in, Gibbs is like, what am I looking for? I'm not a draftnik, right? John Bonneville's the draftnik in this room. He knows all about these guys. I know, though, when I see the number after the period in the 40 time, when it's a 3, I like that. I like 4-3 running backs. And Jahmyr Gibbs is that. And he's got good size, and he's been a great playmaker. He was a great playmaker at Alabama. So there's a lot to like there, but also he has a great offensive line. So I like a lot about him, but also David Montgomery worries the hell out of me, man. David Montgomery can be pretty serviceable, especially running behind a great offensive line. Andrea, thank you very much. Gator, thank you. You will hope to see you as well. And yes, I'll be roaming around. Gibbs is going way too early for Mr. Scampers. Is David Montgomery's turn to score 17 touchdowns? Not going to give him 17. I'll say 15. No, he could score a lot, but so could Gibbs, right? And I mean, they had tons of carries, in scoring position. Does that happen again this year? Those short yardage carries, do they get that same position? Maybe they score in different ways. So I don't know. It's tough. Mr. Scampers feeling the same. Lions taking him where they took him, John Bonneville says, speaks volume. It does. Absolutely, absolutely does. Thanks, Gator. Appreciate you coming. And yes, hit the like button. Or the dislike button. I'm okay with that. Not everyone has to like me. All right. We're going to wrap it up for the day. Mr. Scampers is correct. Same with the Swift Penny situation. It's hard for me to overpay. That's why I'm going with the cheaper piece there. I do have some Gibbs. I went heavily on Gibbs on the thank you, Brian Larkin. I appreciate that. I have gone pretty heavy in Gibbs in early dynasty, in my dynasty rookie drafts, but that has as much to do with draft position as anything else. But yes, I am taking some shots. And Mr. Scampers is right. In best ball 10s, you have to take some shots. In best balls in general, you have to take some shots at those guys. So that is 100% true. All right, everybody. Again, I'm Bob Harris, in case you hadn't heard, allegedly, reportedly. It's rumored to be. I work at FootballDiehards.com. It's a website with all kinds of great content. You should go there and use the promo code Diehards to get a discount. You should listen to me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Saturday nights right now from 7 to 10 or 7 to 9. By the way, that'll be cranking up. It sounds like in July we'll be going up to the multi-week shows. But this coming week, I'll be on Monday with Fabiano on Fantasy Dirt, and Friday it will be me and Lindsay Rhodes on Fantasy Dirt. So listen to that. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 hours. So that'll be a good time. I don't know if you're out there. We're still drafting in your Fantasy Cares Eliminators. I've got 2 still going. Having a good time. I don't know what the hell I'm doing this year. Like every year, I'm really happy that I've done a great job and I finished really high, and like I feel super successful. This year, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And I almost didn't say hell. I almost said something else because I have no idea, 0 idea. And also looking forward to the Scott Fish Bowl. I'm going to do the live Dallas draft this year, and looking forward to that. So, and we'll discuss some of that as we get closer to it. Some of the strategies and whatnot for some of you who are in there. So, all right, everybody, Have a great night. I'll be here Saturday, noon as always, probably with a guest, so you don't have to listen to me go on endlessly. You can listen to someone else go on endlessly and me go on endlessly at the same time. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Scampers. Thank you, Dame. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Golf Boy. Appreciate you all very much. Thank you so much for coming. You too, John. Have a good night, everybody.